In the previous video on Anglo-French rivalry in India, we saw how Dupleix outsmarted English during the First Carnatic Wars by capturing Madras and dominating the Coromandel coast. But because of Paris' short-sightedness and their preferences in America, the French have to hand over the strategic city of Madras to the English as per the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, putting both parties back to the position where they have started in 1741. But indefatigable Dupleix was trying hard to gain the dominance in Carnatic India. Accordingly, the opportunity emerged with the uncertainty surfaced over Deccan and Carnatic with the death of Mughal Emperor Muhammad Ali of 1748, followed by Nizamul Mulk, the Viceroy of Deccan, in grave in June 1748. The most able second son of Nizam, Nasir Jung, who was with his father at the time of death, followed the prevailing common path of Muhamddan succession, seized the father treasure, bought over nobles as well as the army, and proclaimed himself the Subedar of Deccan. Though the Subedar post was not heralded, it became more customary than consent due to the weakness of centralized Mughal authority. But Mujaffar Jung, the son of one of the daughters of the late Nizam, was the more preferred successor, and the consent of this arrangement was earlier taken from Mughal Emperor Muhammad Shah. However, at the time of death, he was in Bijapur, was not inclined to give up his claims without struggle. Therefore, he sought the help of Maratha, the bitter enemy of Muhamddan, and he went to Satara in person, where he also met the Chanda Sahib, the deposed Nawab of Trichinapalli, who was kept there as a captive for ransom. The two soon found themselves mutually serviceable to one another and came to an understanding to endeavour for the material support from Maratha. However, Chanda Shaib, who had a little wish to conquer Carnatic with the aid of his old enemies, communicated the plan to Dupleix through his wife, who was residing in Pondicherry for security. Meanwhile, at Fort St. David, the English were convening with the two-time deposed ex-ruler of Tanjore, Sahuji, to remove the present Raja Pratap Singh in lieu of Fort Devikota. Therefore, due to the existing complication, Dupleix did not want to bring another Maratha incursion. He embraced the project with the natural impassioned nature and agreed to pay 7 lakh rupees for Chanda Sahib release and also furnished 3,000 guards to escort him. Chanda Sahib further hired 3,000 native Sipahi drilled in European way at Pondicherry, which was assisted by 400 Europeans, and with this contingent reached the frontier of the Carnatic. At the end of July near Damalcheri Pass, he was joined by Mujaffar Jung's 30,000 army, where a French contingent under the command of d'Auteuil was waiting for them. Nawab Anwaruddin, with his 20,000 forces and 2 sons, supported by some European adventurers, took position at Ambur. On August 3, Chanda Sahib with d'Auteuil came in sight. D'Auteuil took the lead, but Nawab's guns were so well served by the European that he had to retreat. In the second attempt, he was wounded, and command then devolved to M.D. Bashi, soon to be famous in history, who in the third French attempt broken the defense, exposing the native army. The force under Chanda Sahib then took the lead. Nawab Anwaruddin, though an old man, fought in a more gallant way but was shot dead by one African soldier. A general disorder followed and the defeat became a rout. The elder son Mahfuz Khan surrendered, and the second son Muhamad Ali saved himself with an early flight. The victorious group captured Arcot, the seat of power of the Carnatic. Mujaffar Jung proclaimed himself the Subedar of Deccan and placed Chanda Sahib as a Nawab of Carnatic. And after securing surrounding country, both proceeded to Pondicherry to thank and acknowledge the aid and help given by Dupleix. They were received with the greatest pomp and show, as Dupleix understood the effect of display in the native mind. So it was not only a materialistic show but also a display of a strength of military and defences, with ships flying French flags in the harbour. Mujaffar Jung was captivated by the display, and the Chanda Sahib was unbounded for the gratitude. 81 villages adjoining Pondicherry were given to French, and after an 8-day stay, Mujaffar Jung left to join his army camp for deciding further course of action. However, Chanda Sahib was retained to settle the plan for further campaigning in Carnatic. Muhamad Ali, the younger son of Anwaruddin Khan, had taken refuge in the strongly fortified fort of Trchinapalli, and Dupleix was well aware that Chanda Sahib, owing to his relation with his earlier Nawab Dost Ali family, had first right to the seat of Arcot, for which approval from the Mujaffar Jung is also granted, and whose own authority had been earlier confirmed by Farman of Delhi. Muhammad Ali's submission or elimination was necessary to clear the Carnatic and dependencies of enemies. Therefore, he pressed Chanda Shaib to march to Trichinapalli. But there was a hindrance. While the Battle of Ambur was going on in August, in persuasion of the article of Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, Madras was being transferred to English under the presence of a strong fleet of Admiral Boscawen, which had participated in the siege of Pondicherry earlier, whose details are discussed in my earlier video. And in presence in the area impressed the English to cast their vote to Muhamad Ali or any other working against the French design. Thus, under the guise of an agreement with the Raja Sahuji, English troops under Major Lawrence stormed Devikota fort from seaside after several failed attempts. The Raja Pratap Singh, after initial gallant resistance, entered into an alliance with the English against the Chanda Shaib threat and agreed to cede the forces and nearby villages. English retired his partner Raja Sahuji to Madras with some pension. Therefore, the moment Admiral Boscawen fleet left Madras, the French troops of 800 Europeans and 300 Africans and a train of artillery under M. Dasquin leadership joined the Chanda Shaib force and marched toward Trchinapalli to set scores with Muhamad Ali. But in mid-course, Chanda Shaib, who was in dire need of funds, without consulting Dupleix, changed the course to Tanjore, whose reaches were more proverbial, and he was entitled to get the areas to tribute due to Mughal Mujaffar Jung as Subedar of Deccan. The allied army reached on November 7 and summoned Raja Pratap Singh to surrender, who in view of gaining time agreed to negotiate. In the meantime, he asked English and Subedar Nasir Jung for help. Dasquin urged Chanda Shaib not to waste time in negotiation, but Chanda Shaib was more interested in money, in which 6 weeks were lost. This had given time to Muhamad Ali for preparation and Nasir Jung to march to Carnatic. At last, on order from Dupleix, the Dasquins attacked Tanjore and reached the town gate, resulting in a treaty for payment to Chanda Shaib and a Tiwan village near Karaikal to the French. But meanwhile, Nasir Jung succeeded in collecting an enormous army and marched to Carnatic to crush his nephew and rivals. Knowing this, Raja Pratap Singh kept busying Chanda Shaib in lengthening the payment. Dupleix urged to crush the faithless Raja and take control of Tanjore. Meanwhile, Chanda Shaib troops refused to follow order. The mutinous army, for want of pay and also hearing the rumor of a massive army of Nasir Jung, rapidly headed back within the Pondicherry wall. Dupleix was temporarily shattered by the weakness of the instruments, but he was bound to face such a resolute situation. Therefore, he arranged pay for the mutinous army from his own fund and then sent a 2,000-strong army under the leadership of M. d'Autil in a westerly direction to face the enemy at Valdavur with Chanda Shaib and Mujaffar Jung forces on their side. Dupleix also opened a secret negotiation channel with Nasir Jung, but unfortunately, the majority of French officers refused to fight for the partiality in disbursement of money from Tanjore. D'Autil was forced to retreat, which was followed by Chanda Shaib and his forces. Mujaffar Jung preferred surrendering to his uncle for mercy, but the retreat was not simple. The Maratha troops under Murari Rao on the side of Nasir Jung inflicted considerable damage. Mujaffar Jung was put under iron and Muhamad Ali was declared the Nawab of Carnatic. This shattered the scheme of Dupleix. But acting smartly, he put all mutinous officers under trial. Soldiers were reminded it was not they who retreated but their officers who failed, which helps to restore the discipline. Further, he sends envoys to Nasir Jung for negotiation, which ultimately failed. And on the night of 12th April, Dupleix sent a strong detachment to teach lesson to the Maratha Murari Rao army, which was stationed between the main body of Nasir Jung forces and the Pondicherry. They inflicted heavy damage and killed 1,200 men of the panicked army in the night and returned to Pondicherry at the end of daybreak. The bold step frightened the Nasir Jung, who broke his camp and returned to the safe fort of Arcot, leaving English, who also returned to St. David. Further, to strike blow to Muhamad Ali and English, d'Autil 500 forces crossed the river Pannar and captured the fortified pagoda of Tiruvadi, command the neighboring areas. Alarmed with loss, Nasir Jung sent a 20,000 army to support Muhamad Ali for attack. English also joined Muhamad Ali with 400 Europeans and 1,500 Sipahis under Captain Cope. Notwithstanding the overwhelming superiority of the enemy, d'Autil well defended the position near the river Pannar, and after 6 hours of intense fighting, the enemy were retreated with a big loss. To strike further blow, 1,300 Europeans and 2,500 Sipahis led by De la Tos and 1,000 horsemen commanded by Chanda Shaib joined Deotil to attack the Muhamad Ali army stationed between St. David and Tiruvadi. The blow was decisive. They left leaving their all ammunition stores and supplies. If battles are to be judged by consequences, then this was certainly a great victory. Further, to strike a more effective blow to Nasir Jung, Dupleix sent a detachment of 250 Europeans, 1,200 Sipais with 4 field guns under the soon-to-be famous Dibasi to capture the impregnable Jinji fort. He reached on September 11 where remnants of Muhammad Ali's 10,000 army with 1,000 Europeans stationed. Dibasi stormed the camp and pushed backward the fugitive under the wall of Jinji, from where guns opened fire on pursuers. With a hand-to-hand fight by the night, the town was taken over, but the citadel was still under the enemy. But high in pitch and fervor, Dibasi and his team scaled the citadel and Jinji was under their control, defeating an army vastly superior and storming a fortress believed to be impregnable, which defied for 3 years the strong army of Aurangzeb. It might be the first stone of the French Empire in India. Nasir Jung, devoted in pleasure, awakened for action. Meanwhile, Dupleix also opened the negotiation with him for the release of Mujaffar Jung, appointing Chanda Shaib of Nawab of Arcot and ceding Machilipatnam port to the French. In any case, the first condition was not acceptable, so Nasir Jung chose to try the fortune of war. He moved toward Jinji with 60,000 foot soldiers, 7,000 elephants and 360 cannons. But the severe monsoon rain during the September to December made the movement of the army difficult, and both sides were remained inactive. Dupleix, however, used these times to secretly deal with the Pathans and Maratha on his side. Among the confusion in December, the war broke, and with the 3,800 trained and disciplined men on their side, De la Tosh faced a vast army. But due to the debauchery of Pathan Nawab, the Dalwai of Mysore and the Maratha who absent themselves, Nasir Jung was killed in action and then followed the rout. On December 26, Mujaffar Jung with his followers arrived again in Pondicherry and put all his wealth in front of Dupleix and requested him to arbitrate with the Pathan Nawabs with whom differences were started to crop up. Dupleix refused to accept any booty from his side and brokered peace. In an imposing ceremony, Mujaffar Jung was declared as Subedar of Deccan in the presence of tributaries and vassals. Dupleix was declared Nawab of south of the river of Krishna to Cape Comorin with the title of Mansabdar with 7,000 horses. Machilipatnam and Yonan was ceded to French with lots of areas from around Karaikal. Muhamad Ali, abandoned by everybody, accepted the sovereignty of Chanda Sahib. After settling the important matter, Mujaffar Jung expressed his intention to leave for the governance of his important northern part of the territories and requested a body of French troops to accompany the important and risky part of his journey. This was matching with the policy of Dupleix, as it assured him any changes in policy by the councils of Subedars. On January 7, 1751, Mujaffar Jung left Pondicherry with a strong French contingent under the command of Dibasi. And at the end of 3 weeks, they entered the Nawab of Kadapa territory, where, apparently accidental, a tumult with some local villages on which side became the Nawab of Kadapa, Mujaffar Jung was killed. The death of Subedar might become the fatal blow to the policy of the Dupleix, but Dibasi played the greatest wisdom. With the concurrence of principal officer of the army, set aside the infant son of Mujaffar Jung and proclaimed the next brother of previous Subedar Nasir Jung, Salabat Jung, as a Subedar of Deccan. And he, with no exceptions of rule, confirmed all the concessions granted to the French, including some addition. A few days later, the army continued route, storming the rebel Nawab fortress and buying the peace with the Maratha, and reached the Hyderabad on April 12, where they stayed for 3 months before marching to Aurangabad. In the spring of 1751, an enormous extent of the country recognized the moral supremacy of Pondicherry. The territory, virtually known as the Nizam, was ruled by a French general as the French army occupied the capital, and the French influence predominated the Subedar Council, including the influence in the territories of Mysore, Tanjore, Trichinapalli, Madurai and Cochin. Though the French do not own these places, it was settled policy to keep the authority in background and rule with the native princes. The English, deprived of all pretext of influences, were sulking in Madras and Fort St. David. But their presence constituted a thorn inside the French India ruler Dupleix, whose hands were tied against attacking them.